Okay, how you doing? We're going to talk about this idea of what it means to factor completely. You hear it constantly. You first start off your lessons with factoring, and then we go into this idea of factoring completely. So, essentially what we're going to look for is that up here, you're going to look at your three terms for this quadratic, and you're going to say, okay, is there something that they all share in common? And that's what it essentially means to factor. It means to write something as a multiplication problem. So, when I first take a look at this, what I want to notice is I'm going to look at each term individually and go, what do they all share in common? So, I look at 2x squared, I look at 18x, and I look at 40. They all don't share an x in common, so I'm just now going to look at the numbers. 2, 18, and 40. What do they all share in common? Well, it just so happens to be that they're all multiples of 2. Because they're all multiples of 2, that means that that is a common factor between all of them. So what we do to start this process off, and when I do this, I'm then going to go into the grid method, which I explained in a previous video. So what we're simply going to do here is that to start this off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the terms that I'm going to use. And again, I'm just going to use a grid very quickly to help me, because I just think it makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to designate a box here, okay? So a grid here for each term, and I'm going to plug the term in. So I'm going to look at, okay, 2x squared, 18x, and then 40. And what I'm going to plug over here, this is going to be what we call the common multiple. So what are these all common multiples of? And I just want to list that right here very quickly. So if we notice they're all common multiples of 2, that's where I'm going to list it. So now what I want to show is down here what the expression is without that common multiple of 2. So the way you just simply do it is, okay, 2 times what would give me this 2x squared? Well, it's got to be x squared. And then I come down here and I go, okay, 2 times what makes 18x? Well, it's got to be 9 times 2, so I put the x with it just to make sure, and it's a positive 9, so I'm going to write plus here. The next thing I look at, 2 times what makes 40? So then I'm going to look at, okay, that's going to be a positive 20. Okay? So now I have my expression. So I'm going to leave this guy out until the very end. So what I need to do with this 2 now is I just need to make sure that it goes into my final answer. So my final answer I'm going to be putting right here. So down here I'm going to do my work for this one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the AC method, the quadratic formula method, or you can follow this thing that I was calling the cross plus mat. Whichever way you want to do it. I have 3 videos that pretty much show a couple different methods for factoring. They're all the same thing. They all get you the same answer. It's just methods that have existed for years that just show it. So this one here is now what I'm going to factor. Like I said, I'm going to use the AC method because I think most kids do a lot better with this. So the AC method requires us then now to draw another grid. But now we draw a 2 by 2 grid. So we draw 4 boxes, and that's all because this term here, again at the end, remember that this quadratic trinomial was formed by a binomial times a binomial, which means 2 terms in each, which means 4 terms total, which means that the answer had 3, so I had to have 4 originally. So we draw this grid down here for each 4 of those, okay? So what I'm now going to do is I put the AC term down here, so the x squared, and I put the C term in the upper right. Now it doesn't matter if I start left or right, they just have to be in opposite corners of each other. The 9x I leave out for a second. So now I do A times C, which gives me 20x squared. Now what I'm simply going to do is I'm going to think about now, okay, what can I multiply together that makes 20x squared that when added makes 9x? Now, you can list them out or you don't have to list them out. It depends on how good you get with numbers at this point. For me, I tell kids to list them out until they get the hang of it, so we're just going to list them out very quickly. So, the factors of 20. The factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, okay? 3, no, 4, 4 and 5, 6, no, and then we're done, okay? So now I have the factors listed out. I'm just going to look at which ones can I combine somehow, some way. Either I can add them or subtract them, or you can just make them negatives and then sum them together, however you want to think about it. But now I'm going to look at 1 and 20, no way on earth. 21, it doesn't matter. 2 and 10, no possible way. And 4 and 5, okay. So now if I keep them both positive and multiply them, it makes positive 20. If I add them together when they're both positive, I can't switch them at this point, then I go ahead and I get 9. So what I need to remember is that this was a 20x squared, so the 4 has to have an x and the 5 has to have an x. So this becomes 4x and 5x, all right? So what I now have here is that I've got this grid that I show. And the grid, each one of these boxes is going to be made by a multiplication of something else. Okay, so this is where I get my binomials from. And the binomials that I'm going to have here is I'm going to look at this box and go, okay, what times what? I have to have two things. So what times what makes x squared? But when I think of that, I also have to be thinking about when I put this thing here, it's going to also have to make this box. And when I put this here, it's also going to have to make this box, which is why I don't want to put an x squared here and then put a 1 there. Because what times x squared is going to make a lower exponent, and you don't have something like that. And we don't want to get into putting negative exponents in there, because then it makes it all head crazy. So what I want to do is I want to say, okay, x times x will make there. Then I go up here and I go, okay, what do I have to multiply this x by to make 4x? Well, it's just a 4, so I put it there. So again, kind of bringing them together, Then I go over here, 4 times what makes 20. So the thing that I use down here is a 5. Now the last thing I just want to check is that this go ahead and works. So x times 5 is 5x. What I now have is my two binomials. It's x plus 4 and x plus 5. If this one was negative, it would be x minus 4, but it's not. It's x plus 4. So now, I'm done. Going to record my final answer. The one thing you definitely want to make sure of is that you don't forget this 2 that I said it has to be in the final answer, right? So it needs to be over here. So with it, so I create this. Then I plug the 2 right outside of it. So it's very simple. To finish this off, I get a 2. I go x plus 4 times x plus 5. And there you have it. I'm done. And it's completely factored, and I've got nothing else to worry about. So that's what it really means to completely factor. The first thing you always want to check for in expressions is, are these 3 terms here, or 4 terms, or 5 terms, do they have a common multiple of any sort? And whatever that common multiple is, you stick here. It doesn't have to just be a number. I could have put a y with all of these, and I would have had a 2y out here as well. So variables do count as common multiples, and I can take out common variables that are in all of these, and that's what I place here. Okay? The whole goal for us for right now is to kind of get back to this quadratic statement if you can. So I hope that helps with whatever you're doing.